Hello and welcome to our first Cloud Champions live stream. I'm so happy to have you here today for the folks joining live on this Friday, September 23rd, and all the folks enjoying us on the replay. Welcome. My name is Neil Metzler, and I am a coach and consultant for careers and well-being in tech. This topic today of global mobility is very near and dear to my heart. I've made professional moves from Seattle to Beijing to London and now Berlin. And I've learned that I really wouldn't be the professional or the human that I am today without these experiences and the relationships that I've built abroad. I think you're here today because you're interested in the leadership opportunities, the career progression that an international career can offer, and also the learning and personal growth. And this kind of learning and personal growth is something that I think I never could have fully imagined before I had moved abroad. So I've put together what I hope is going to be a fun and insightful session for us here today, and I'm inviting you to learn, laugh, and grow with our panelists here. So first, there is a quick win, and I'm happy to share this with you. There is a document that I've put together with 3 steps to global mobility. And this is something based on my learnings and my experience that I've written down here into a 4-page document that I hope you can kind of take off the shelf, pour a cup of tea, and have a think about how this might help you reach your next big thing. So you can get a hold of this, just ping me on LinkedIn or go ahead and check out my free resource bank at cloudchampions.net/resources. And that URL is in the on the screen now. So let's take a look. So tonight, our agenda is really simple. You'll hear from 3 panelists for 40 minutes of moderated discussion. And we've prepared a couple of FAQ that I think will be really useful and broadly applicable. So I'm going to invite now our host and moderator for the evening, Nicholas Richard, as he let me know, to join the stage with me. And Nick, let me go ahead and bring you out here. So I'm going to read your intro, and this is really fun to be doing this project together with you. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Good morning from California. Thanks for taking time in the evening in Berlin to do this. I'm just very excited to be here with you all.
Likewise. Yeah. So, Nick, I brought you and invited you today because I know that you already have international experience. So let me just summarize that for the audience. So I know that you have an MBA and a master's in global affairs that you completed in Toronto, Canada. And you are now a philanthropy fellow at a community foundation in Silicon Valley. And you've worked, lived, and grown in cities like Toronto, Bogota, and also your semester abroad in Buenos Aires. Is that right?
That's right. And Mexico City and Spain as well.
And Mexico City and Spain. That's exactly right. So I also wanted to call out you've had an interesting career path because you have the combination of global affairs as well as your master's in business administration, and you've committed and spent 2 years with the Teach for America program in San Antonio, Texas. So I'm really honored to have you chair and moderate this discussion. I'm going to hand this over to you for that 40 minutes of our FAQ with each of our panelists. And then I'll join back. I'll be running things backstage and join back when it's time for the Q&A, all right?
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Neil.
Thank you.
Great. Well, I'm so honored and excited to be here today. Neil has put together a wonderful panel of really interesting, passionate, and accomplished individuals. And so it's an honor to share the stage with them. I believe Neil mentioned this, but please feel free for those of us joining from all corners of the world to put questions and comments in the chat, as there will be time for Q&A at the end of our panel discussion. And without further ado, I would like to introduce our first panelist, Oscar Ablemit, who is joining us from Paris, where he has been working for the past year. Hi, Oscar. How are you doing?
Hi, Nick. Good. How are you doing? Thanks for having me.
Good. Thank you for joining us. So I'll briefly share your wonderful bio as well. So Oscar joins us from Paris, where he has worked for the last year building out the European business for a global cloud provider. Previously, he worked at Alibaba and Amazon in Beijing for 5 years in sales and account management roles. Oscar studied HR management in Beijing and is completing a master's at George Washington University in the business of cloud. So welcome, Oscar.
Thank you.
And Oscar, I want to start at the beginning. So you moved, and I believe I have this correct, you moved from Beijing to Paris, which is a huge move. So I would really love to hear from you. Can you walk us through why you decided to make that leap? And was working abroad always the goal for you? And why Paris?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for having me in this panel discussion. I'm really glad to be here. So before I jump into the question, I also want to share, even in China, I was born in north west part of China, and then I actually choose to move to southeast part of China for better education for my high school, and then I moved to Beijing for my college and work. So I sometimes make a joke, and I consider myself as a nomad because I'm just moving all of my life, even in China, because considering how big it is, like moving from one province to another province, it's like moving one country from another country in Europe. So that's how I started my life, just moving all of the place, all over the world. And then come back to the question, like why I moved to Paris. It's more like opportunity driven. I had a really good opportunity in Beijing as well, but I always wanted to try a bigger, broader stage. Try to work in different country, in different environment, and then I got a really good opportunity with one of the tech giant in China to help them expand and then develop their European market. So I think it's really exciting, and also like the other reason that I was really kind of attracted with that is when I was in China, I helped American cloud tech giant to land in China and expand in China. Now I'm helping another tech giant to do the opposite versus. So I think it's a good like kind of supplement for my experiences and my work career. So that's I took that opportunity, and then I never dreamed about to coming to Paris. I did dream. I said I would be here for traveling. I never thought I would be here working because I don't speak French. So, but it did happen, and I really enjoyed my time here so far.
That's wonderful. I really identify with what you're saying too about even within the same country, different regions can feel like a different country. I remember when I moved to Texas and then now moving to California, it's, very different culturally. So I definitely feel that. And Oscar, can you tell us, how has your international experience enhanced your career, and what have been any, I guess the best aspects of working abroad, and then any difficulties or trade-offs that you've faced?
For my experiences, I think first definitely the international, the career exposed me to broader community, industrial community, definitely. So in China, I will only access to like more local community, and in here, like the whole Europe market is open to us, and then I can access to other Europe, like American, other kind of market as well. And cloud, I mean cloud, like from natively from cloud perspective, it's international business. Like you cannot really focus on one specific region. All of the cloud provider, they have at least 20 or more regions all over the world. So business itself is international, and now I'm being international myself as well. So I think it's a good for me to kind of get into more broader community, and then also it enhance my skill sets, because living abroad or living in a different environment requires a lot of skills, such as language is basic skills. I need to learn another language, not English, I mean more like local language, to get into like blend into local community, and then like skills to adapt to new environments, skills to be independent, skills to like have a to self learning. So I think I kind of enhance my those skills as well with international experiences. And also another thing is, I think it also helped me to change my perception of the world. When you go out from one specific zone area and then to kind of look at your previous experience or other world, you just your perception is totally changed, and you become more. I become, at least for me personally, I become more calm. I become more tolerant, for a lot of things. So I think it's a good thing. Another things is like for more personal things, I think it's a good chance to understand myself better, because just exposed to a like strange environments, I really start to feel myself, like not only the happiness but also all of the sorrows, sadness that happen on me. I really have a chance to like be with myself and be aware of those emotions. So I think that's a good things. And then if I talk about some challenge, I mean, definitely there are a lot of challenge, like adapting to any new environment. It requires a lot of courage. It requires a lot of work as well. And for me, the biggest one is kind of the like missing family, my friends, or my community over there. Because of time differences and other stuff, it's really hard to like keep kind of a regular communication, connection with those your previous community. So that kind of things is um, kind of a challenge for me sometime.
Sure. Thank you for sharing all that, Oscar. It's really interesting to hear. And just want to applaud you too. From my understanding, you're learning French now. So it sounds like you moved to Paris, not really speaking French. So that's even an additional hurdle. So, very brave of you. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
And that's wonderful. And you touched on a lot of things in terms of sort of a globalized economy and all of the strengths that working abroad instills in you, both personally and professionally. And that's definitely an area we're going to get into further. So thank you for tying that in. And now I would like to bring in our second panelist. So Oscar, we'll be back with you shortly. Our second panelist, Luigina del Pozo, is a sales professional. Hi, Luigina. Good morning.
Hi, good morning, Nick. How are you?
Great. Thank you so much for joining us. And you're in Austin, correct? Austin, Texas?
I am here based in Austin, Texas.
Wonderful.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
Of course. So a quick note on Luigina's background. So she has more than 18 years of experience in sales and business development and has worked in cities across North America, including Monterrey, Mexico City, Seattle, and Austin. Originally from Mexico, Luigina studied finance and accounting at the Tecnológico de Monterrey, and her career has led her to work at companies including GE Capital, LATAM, and Amazon. Currently, Luigina is a strategic partnerships development manager at Google in Austin, Texas. So, Luigina, I'm inspired by how you've moved so fluidly back and forth between Mexico and the US. I think, for many, it's a challenge just to make that first international move, and then typically folks sort of move and then stay. But to be able to kind of go back and forth, I think is very impressive. So I was hoping that you could tell us about how you made that very first international move, and then give us some pro tips on how you've cultivated networks across borders.
Thank you. Yes, I think so. The first time I had the opportunity to work internationally was based out of Monterrey, actually. So it was working for US companies that were looking to invest in Mexico, right? And that's how I was able to, I guess, using my ability to speak English, but more so my understanding of how business is made in Mexico, I was able to be that bridge for the American companies looking to invest in Mexico. And so that was very interesting to me. It gave me the opportunity to learn about the business culture in the US, and sort of like put that into contrast with how we do business in Mexico, and kind of be that translator, not only of the language, but of the culture and the way we do business.
Absolutely.
And that was very exciting. That was a lot of fun for me. I think that was my first opportunity. But then the opportunity that gave me was Amazon, who gave me the opportunity to actually move physically from Mexico City into the US. And that was to serve, again, US companies that were looking to do business in Mexico. And sort of like bring in that perspective on, hey, I know how to make business with US companies, but I also can tell you how we do business in Mexico, so you can adapt your company to be more successful in this market.
That's really interesting. And just because you brought it up, I don't want to get us too off the rails, but do you mind sharing some of those, differences in doing business in Mexico versus the US? Not to put you on the spot.
Yes, for sure. I think the first one is the communication style. I think the U.S. business culture is more forward, more direct, right? They're not afraid of asking what they want out of a situation. And in Latin America, that can come across as very aggressive, right? You intentionally want to go around the bushes a little bit, sort of not to put anyone off in a business situation. The other thing I'll say, it comes from like a time management, right? Like you want to be the most efficient you can in the US because you have limited resources, the resources being people and their time. And in Latin America, we kind of like feel like, oh, we have time, we'll get to that as well, right? In a business discussion. Another thing that it's, I feel like in the US, it's, very step 1, 2, 3, 4 of how we want to get things going. And in Latin America, we might not be that straightforward in our path, but I think it's that combination of US business culture pushing for things to get done that way, kind of like we meet in the middle and then we make it work out.
Sure. That's fascinating. And I love the idea of serving, and you having served as not just a translator, from English to Spanish and Spanish to English, but also of cultures. I think that's, absolutely spot on. So thank you for adding that perspective. And it sounds like in terms of cultivating networks across borders, it sounds like Amazon has really allowed you to do that, given it's such an international company. And I'm sure, there's many of your coworkers that have made the move all over the world through Amazon, including ones on this call with us, including our other panelists.
Exactly. Yes, I met Neil actually at Amazon when I joined, and he was one of the very gracious people that was willing to help out, to train, to, hey, this is how we do things here, this is how I've done things somewhere else, and tell me how you do things in Mexico, and maybe we can find something that works out the best for you in Mexico. And I think that willingness of people to open up and show you how they do things and show you their best practices, my ability to just listen, that has built those relationships internationally. And then as we have all moved across the world, we kind of like remember that time we spent together, we were together, and that's how we have kept those relationships going on through the years. But I was like building up on how do I build those relationships. I feel like I was never afraid to ask, right? Like putting 10 minutes on someone's calendar, a coffee meeting, and then just introduce yourself, right? Share with them what's your objective, your goal. Ask them, hey, I would like to listen more about how do you do this? What do you think about that? And so not being afraid to go ahead and introduce yourself and ask, I think that's a great way to meet new people and build on those relationships.
And I don't know if that's sort of a Latin American mindset, but there's that phrase, sin miedo al éxito, which would be like, don't be afraid, of success. And I think that's absolutely right. I think that's another important thing, is just being open for opportunities, not being afraid. If you're going to move abroad, of course you can't be afraid. And so I think that's key too. Thank you for sharing that. And so now I'd like to bring in our third and final panelist. Luigina will be back with you shortly. We'll open it up to all three of you. But our third panelist now, Marcelo Boira, is, there you are. Hi, Marcelo, how are you?
Hello, all good. Thank you. Happy to be here.
Wonderful. So I'll quickly read your bio as well. So Marcelo is a technologist with 12 years of experience in software, solutions architecture, and site reliability engineering. Marcelo began his career in Brazil before moving to Germany in 2016, where he blogs about expat FAQs on buying a home, paths to citizenship, and making sense of German bureaucracy, which I imagine that's not easy.
It's true. Yeah.
In addition to AWS, Marcelo worked in high-growth startups like Movinga, Heycar, and Airbnb. Marcelo is currently making things boring in a good way as a staff site reliability engineer at SeatGeek. So welcome, Marcelo. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you.
And Marcelo, I'd like to start by asking you, why Germany? Similarly to our other panelists, I would love to hear, how did you make that first move? And also, what has been the most rewarding, most challenging, or most surprising aspect of working abroad?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. So for me, it wasn't something I've planned. I've always idealized like moving abroad, living this experience, kind of romanticize and kind of platonize a little bit. But I've always acted on it. I've always wanted to go somewhere. I've knew English or a little bit of English, learned a lot through job interviews. So has been kind of a interesting experience. And I didn't plan to move specifically to Germany, but giving my skill set, this overlap of skill set and where the market leads you, I've ended up here. And to this date, I think it was one of the best coincidences or kind of fate kind of things on my life, because I'm really happy where I am now. But yeah, I had to, similar to Oscar, learn the language as well. I didn't speak any German coming here, and it has been very interesting to kind of, as you mentioned as well, unveil some of those bureaucracies and help people that also don't speak English and German in our movement here, because I think it's an amazing country to live.
It's wonderful too how all three of you really are giving back from the FAQs that you're publishing to help out others. I'm just curious, is there a pretty robust expat community in Berlin? Have you been able to tap into that, and do you all sort of help each other out?
Yeah, there's for sure. So there are many different bubbles of communities there. So you have the tech community. I also have a huge amount of Brazilians living in Berlin itself, but in Germany as a whole. Brazil was targeted of immigration for Germans, so there's a huge wave of people coming back nowadays. Economy shifts and things like that. But also the tech community. There's always I have a few friends that moved recently as well, and I always tell them, you go to meetups. You can go to a meetup from Monday to Monday and meet new people. Whether that's technology meetup or just startup overall, like talking about business models or buying houses or anything that you might wonder, there's some meetup happening in Berlin. So it's very similar to pubs, I guess, in London. You have meetups in Berlin from everything.
Of course, that's great. Well, Marcelo, you started to touch on the tech community too, and that's something that's shared across all of our panelists. It's not lost on me. So I'm hoping to bring back all of our panelists now, and then we can start talking about the tech space and whether that may be the secret to breaking into work abroad. Perfect. So welcome back, Luigina and Oscar.
Hi.
So now this question is for all of you. So anyone feel free to jump in. But all of you are working in the tech space now. You didn't all start there necessarily. Luigina, I know your background was really more in finance and sales for quite a number of years before making the shift into tech. So for anyone who wants to answer, now that you are all working in tech, if the goal is to work abroad, do you think that tech is the way to go? Or are there opportunities to work abroad in other industries?
I can go first if that's okay. Based on my experience, I will say yes, right? I feel like mobility abroad is organic to most tech companies because talent is highly valued versus someone's geographic location. But that being said, not necessarily. I've had a family, peers, friends who were able to do that. And just from the top of my head, my brother, he's a chemical engineer and he moved from Mexico to Canada. Some of my commercial finance peers, they moved from Mexico to the United States. Or one of my best friends, she works in manufacturing in Mexico, and then she moved with the same company to Germany. And so not necessarily, I feel like definitely working for a company who has operations in that country or business culture that you're interested in experiencing, it's definitely a must. But I think more than tech versus other industries, in my opinion, I think it's more important having the right manager that values your talent. And so it's working in the right culture for you, a company that aligns with your leadership values as well.
And I think as well, contributing to what Georgina just said, I think it's very interesting that nowadays or let's put it this way, in the past we used to think or categorize companies as, tech or non-tech, but nowadays anything can be tech. It just depends on how fast the company is to adapt to, injecting tech into their, nature. So I have friends that they're lawyers, and then maybe they would not be able to act as a lawyer officially in Germany. But if they move here to work for companies, so I had a few colleagues and friends at Airbnb that they come here and then, maybe they don't know the German law, but they're able to, with their knowledge, to dive in and investigate the German law, even though they don't have to actually act as lawyers. They will basically help Airbnb to understand the local policies, and maybe they can get their lawyer degree here as well and validate those things. I guess this is the part where non-tech areas have a hard time because of the regulations and all of this friction that might emerge because things are done differently, business is done differently, health is done differently, and so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, there's always space. Maybe you're a mechanical engineer. You cannot act as a mechanical engineer in Germany, but you can join a company that is doing something related to that and be an expert or advisor in that area, and so on and so forth. I do have countless examples of that too. Of course, tech on itself and tech companies facilitate this move because that's how they operate, and even more a startup, right? People are actually embracing the change, embracing the diversity, but it's not a limiting factor. Just maybe be harder and cause more friction to be able to act on your profession. But there are some jumps and hoops you can take along the way to at least walk towards that direction and not, invalidate moving abroad as a whole.
Yeah, I can add up several points. I think there are several factors which kind of make it easy or make it hard for international, transfer. Like the first one, I think it's job market. Like, I mean, wherever you move, definitely you need to you need to compete with local talents. Like, first of all, you don't have advantages, with language, and then other stuff. So definitely if there's no like really strong demands for job market, I think it's really hard for any market. Let's say for some of the niche market, local talent is enough. I guess if for international talent it's hard to fit in. The second factor is like if it depends, is it like really standardized job, like is it the same in any country? Like for tech it's kind of same, right? Like if you front end engineer, you would do the same, pretty much same thing in any other country. You would use the same language even for programming language. You might work in a different team, even for the business process, or all of the culture might be really similar. So it's kind of really internationally defined role, so you can switch any places. But when I move, actually I took this into consideration because my role is more front end, more like tech sales. So I need to talk to a lot of people, so you need to know the language, you need to know the culture and a lot of stuff. So I thought I actually learned a lot of technical stuff. In case that I can't find a job, I might just pivot to technical job. But it did work, and at the end, if you try hard and then if you like make some investment, it will work. But it definitely a challenge. You need to came out of your comfort zone and then do some change, make some change.
That's interesting because you all kind of bring up really interesting points around. There's what we think of as traditional tech companies, your Amazons, Ubers, Airbnb, but then there's also sort of the tech roles. So, working for Giant Eagle grocery store, but doing the programming side, or at the tech companies like Amazon, they're not all tech roles, right? There's HR, there's legal, and so, if you're working in HR or legal at a tech company, is that still tech or not? And then this difference between sort of these really large multinational corporations and then sort of your small, quickly growing startups. So I think there's so much nuance. And Neil, I see you popped in. So would you like to add to this discussion?
Yeah, I've tried to figure this out for a long time because I came into Amazon in one place, and then I made moves in two different departments. And what I encourage folks to think about is understanding which parts of the business are higher margin and which parts of the business are lower margin, because that can help you understand what resources can be available. And another thing is kind of growth factor. So am I in a high growth area of my current company, or am I sort of in a low growth area or a place that sees some major headwinds for the next few years? And if that's the case, would I like to gain some new skills in the way that Oscar and Marcelo and Mujina spoke about? Well, if you can cultivate the network, if you can build the skills, you can really punch your own ticket. So I think that margin, growth, and skills development are three things that I look for when I speak with clients about their move abroad.
Okay, margin, growth, and skills development. I'm taking my notes down here below. So that's great. Well, and then I believe it was Marcelo that you were talking about having some pro tips to reduce that friction and those possible setbacks. So I would like to turn that back over to the
when they hire us. So we need to prove like why we are better fit than local talents. So for that, as Nick said, I mean, if you already start your experience in a foreign company with your local market and then transfer, definitely you have more to say, because you have experiences and you can have a lot of showcase. And another case for my situation, I mean, I already started because I know that I want to move to, I thought I would, want to move to US. That's why I started my master's in US already before actually I moved, just to showcase that, okay, I already had these experiences, I had these degrees, and then, I can, this is how I compete with local market. So I think you always need to be ready for that. Like you need to prove that you are better than local market, otherwise it's, I mean, there's opportunity, but you cannot get the best opportunity that you're targeting for.
So I've got one or two more FAQs that I think are burning topics, and then I think we can plan to wrap up the stream in the next 10 minutes. And I appreciate you're all working professionals in different time zones. So if anyone needs to sign off and drop, feel free to do so. I think we'll just run 10 more minutes here. And if you're in the chat, feel free to ask another question. Really appreciate that. Tahira says, thanks a lot. Cool. So one of the kind of hotly debated questions was, yeah. We haven't talked about any of the challenges or drawbacks of moving abroad. And maybe I'll go first. So compensation is a topic that comes up. Different countries have very different compensation markets and tax structures, and also sometimes expectations about seniority, tenure, paying dues, things like that. So it can be interesting to consider, the business culture in your target country as well, right? Did any of you face, how did that factor in for you? And ultimately, how did you decide to move forward with your decision?
Actually, I was going to say that one of the trade-offs that I feel like I faced was sometimes you get leveled down from your existing role, or it's just a role with a smaller scope, and it's just due to the bigger nature of the market you're moving into, right? Latin America is a smaller market than the US, and so that was one of the trade-offs that I had to make peace with. And another thing that I think Oscar just mentioned as well, is like sometimes the proposed role can be not exactly your dream opportunity, but it is a chance, right, to create a path in a country or a company where you want to be. And sometimes you have to wait in that and think if that's something that you want to take.
Yeah, you're saying, right, that what am I flexible on versus what am I gonna be firm and stubborn on is kind of important to be self-aware about, right? Yeah.
And if that step is also the step, at least towards the direction you want to, pursue the goal that you want to find and live. I think I've used to see this, at least in tech, more in the past, where companies would not necessarily take advantage, but embrace some of the advantages of like hiring someone from a foreign country and then paying a little bit less, or having a different downplaying the salary, or using the move as a benefit as well, which is a valid point. It's a trade. We're all here adults and making this business decisions, but at the end of the day, more towards the last couple of years, I would say before the pandemic and even during the pandemic, maybe a huge jump. I could notice this huge jump on companies not being able to do that anymore because there's just not so much, offering for the demand that companies need at this point. So I see positions that they are open for a long time, and those positions open that I see open for more than 6 months and 12 months usually are the positions that I personally highlight as like either that's a very difficult profile to hire, or there's a catch there, like someone is trying to downplay. So then it goes into salary negotiation and things like that. But I would say I see that less often than I used to see in the past, where companies would use this as an advantage, because nowadays you can work in theory from anywhere, so compensation became more of a less geographically dependent topic. So you can kind of negotiate your salary differently regardless where you're going to go.
And this is a great topic for us to kind of finish on, which is zooming back, understanding what's happening with work and careers with the work from anywhere topic. So I wanted to pose this question to you three. How do you think about the idea that if I can work from anywhere, let's say I'm based in one place, but I work in another place for weeks or months each year, why should I still think about an international transfer, an international role?
I mean, for me, I think it really depends like which role and then why you really want to move for different countries. I mean, for me, it's more like to experience local market, local culture. It's not only for work. So for that situation, even if I'm able to work for, let's say, for this company, still from China remotely, but I can't really feel, I will lose all of the local, opportunity, local like experience with that with that way of work. So I would say, um, for my situation, definitely worse. Like international roles. Even if now I'm working from home in Paris, I mean, I can't really go out to the office or something else, but still worse. Um, and that's a good step. When you are in this market, like when you step in there, and then you will have more other opportunity, more doors open for you. If you remotely there, I mean, you might still like, from your you stay in your previous position there, and you can have a lot of new opportunities, new doors open for you. That for me, definitely it's worth it.
Yeah, I think it goes back to what Neil also said right at the beginning in the introduction, like people connections and ways of working. Experiencing this, of course, you can do that remotely. I could, for instance, be working remote from Brazil instead of I nowadays work remote for a company in the US. I could be working from Brazil, or I could be working from Germany. Of course, time zone has a big factor there, but I think that the work relations and the ways of working from different cultures and different countries, even different languages, have a huge impact on the career. Nowadays, I've lived and experienced German ways of doing things in German companies. I've learned later on, I've worked for a few North American companies, and I can kind of embrace the changes I find valuable on those ways of working. How, nowadays I think I have a German in my head, a North American in my head, a Brazilian in my head, and they talk and they figure when they faced with a problem, like there is a group of different cultures they're trying to figure, and I guess diversity of ways of solving the same problem and trying to figure the trade-offs based on the context is something that is very invaluable. You can get that, of course, from working remote, but it's being there in the market, as also Oscar mentioned. You're basically facilitating that, so it facilitates this transition. Other than, of course, all of the personal traits of being in another country and learning languages and so on.
Marcelo, I think you've ended us on a wonderful note there. So thank you. And I'll leave our profiles up here on the screen. You've been listening to Neil Metzler, Marcelo Boera, Luigina Del Pozo, and Oscar Ablimit today with you live here on September 23rd. If you're joining us live, thank you so much for joining us live. If you're here on the replay, we've been happy to have you. So if folks are interested to connect, please reach out on LinkedIn. I'll go ahead and show the document one more time on screen here. If you are looking to put this into action, you simply should ping me and get a look at this 4-page PDF. This is really deep, detailed with clear first steps, next steps, and last steps for you on how to build a bridge to your next big thing abroad. So you will be credible, capable, and visible, and create concrete, defensible reasons to believe in you, with decision makers evaluating you against the next level. And it won't be easy. You'll need to speak up and communicate that whole time, as you've heard here from our panelists, but it really is worth doing, as you've heard from us here today. So with that, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you to all my guests today. Thank you for making the time, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me. Nice to talk to you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.